I would like to welcome Gita Ramaswamy. She came all the way from Hyderabad, and she especially came for this function. So I welcome her, and I welcome Nandini Sundarji, and both have a very played a very important role in their fields. And Nandini ji, both are in these academics and literary fields, and most of the people heard about themselves much more than that of me. So on behalf of the Press Club of India, I would like to welcome, and we have started a series of discussions on creative writings and very winning discussions that what is happening in the society, because Press Club of India is a place of discussions and exchange of ideas, and we are because we are for free flow information, we are for freedom of press as per the provision of the Constitution of India. So, and apart from this provisions of the Constitution, we are very sensitive and very concerned about the happenings around the world, around the country, and especially in the remote areas of the country. There is a lot of disparities in our society, and I'm happy that through her writings, Gita narrated all these things in her writings time to time. So I will not take much time, and I would like to thank both of you again here, and on behalf of the Press Club of India, and our Secretary General is here. I think without wasting much time, I will request both the personalities to enlighten us and to start your conversations right away. Thank you very much.
Conversation. Just a brief introduction. As a reminder, just to recall it. As you know, Gita Ramaswamy, who is author of several books, she has translated several books from Telugu to English and English to Telugu as well. And she is one of the co-founders of Hyderabad Book Trust. And recently she has published her memoir. It's titled Land, Guns, Caste, Women, Memoir of a Alleged Revolutionary. And this book has been published by Navyana Publication. It's available outside for purchase. You can buy it. And she will be in conversation with Professor Nandini Sundar. She teaches at Delhi School of Economics Sociology. She teaches sociology. She is also author and editor of several books. Especially Burning Forest, which is about the civil war going on in Bastar area of Chhattisgarh. So now I would request Nandini to take it forward. Yeah.
Thank you, Mehta. Jai Bhim, Johar to everyone. And thank you. I feel honored to be doing this conversation with Gita ji. For those of you and thank you to the Press Club as well for organizing this. For those of you who haven't read the book, I strongly recommend that you get a copy immediately. But just to give you a little background on what it says and not what it says, but what it's about. In the tradition, for me personally, this book is one of those books that I think are transformative. It helps one to think not only about the broader political movement, questions about what kind of politics one should have, but also what one's own life is about personally. And in this tradition, the books that I think have really inspired me, and this is the most recent one, but in that tradition, I think Gail Longhead's We Will Smash This Prison, Mary Tyler Moore's My Life in an Indian Prison, and now, Gita Ramaswamy's book, are part of that genre which are really revolutionary. So I don't think that the title really does justice to what the book is about, because it is a revolutionary book. It's not the memoirs of a lapsed revolutionary. It is about how to be revolutionary in different ways. So the book is, as you know, called Land, Guns, Caste, Women, and one of the questions I'm going to ask is about the title. But it's about her life growing up as a Brahmin woman in Hyderabad and then in Madras, now Chennai. Her conflicts with her family as she left, her participation in revolutionary politics, first in the ML and then as part of a Dalit land collective in Ibrahimpatnam, and then about her work as publisher of the Hyderabad Book Trust and about her life and politics. So let me just start by asking first about the title. It's about land, caste, women, but why the guns? They're only there in the background. And why the lapsed revolutionary? Because in a way, as I said, the entire book is about how to be a different kind of revolutionary.
Well, I think the guns came because one of the main people, one of the biggest landlords we were facing was this Bhopal Reddy who went with a rifle, always with a rifle on his shoulder. And there were other people who also had guns. And at that time, guns signified so much power. If someone had a gun, you just didn't go against him. So guns did play a part. And lapsed revolutionary, I mean, I was no longer in the ML, I left the ML. And revolutionary is normally considered being in the ML. So lapsed revolutionary, but really I am not the originator of the title. Anand and Alex here, Alex is also here. They were the people who coined the title. So, I mean, all praise should go to them for a striking title.
Right. But in terms of the kind of politics you discuss, you talk on the one hand of disillusionment with the ML movement for not listening enough to people, for only wanting to lead them in a particular line. But isn't that a characteristic of all parties? So in a sense, are you saying that party politics itself is a problem, or like which party is really listening to what people want, and every party has its own organizational hierarchy and so on?
I mean, I feel we need to rethink party politics. We need to rethink party organizations in a way that make them far more democratic than they are now. So it's not a question of all parties are like that. It's a question of parties are going to be like that. There's not going to be much change that we're going to see. If we need to bring about change, we need to bring about democracy in all party structures. And listening to people, I think, anyone in any field has to, you have to listen to people before you lead or before you say, I have something which I want to tell you. So it's not just parties, it's, if you're a teacher and you're teaching students, you need to listen to students before you need to teach them. So I think these two cardinal principles, it's possible to change India if we take this up. It's not just the ML party, it's even the Congress party now, which you see in such a shambles because of the lack of democracy within the party. So I think that these principles are important for any group which wants to take up any kind of activity.
I mean, you're right. One of my pet peeves right now is that the Congress is on its own Padyatra and it's not allowing the CPI to take out a Padyatra in Sukma district, which is highly undemocratic. So, I think parties in general are a problem. But in the sense that you talk about an alternative to ML politics through Ambedkarite politics, and somewhere you say on page 309 that you wish the left had read Ambedkar and worked militantly on constitutional issues, and you also talk about the fact that once they grab land, then they have no agenda to hold on to it and translate it into constitutional mechanisms. So why is that not an alternative? In the chapters on the Sangam and the liberal land movement, you somehow sort of seem to argue that they came up short in the end. So why is that not the way to go? That kind of militant land movement, which does so many other things, caste marriages, I mean, setting up schools.
A little clarification, that the Sangam did not come up to the end, or the ML movement did not come?
No, the Sangam, you say at the end it sort of stopped and it didn't.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't seem to say, but this is the alternative time that we should take either.
Yeah, but land is just one part of the issue. It's not just land alone. We're talking of transforming relations in the countryside, we are talking of transforming productive relations in the countryside, providing livelihoods to people so that they don't have to migrate to cities. So in that sense, providing land alone is not enough, because the environment is so degraded. When the environment is degraded and poor people are hit the most, even if you have 5 acres of land, what do you do when the subsoil is washed off, the trees are being cut, the produce that you get, you don't get a fair price in the market. So there are so many associated issues which come up even with ownership of land. So and those issues seem to me too big to confront in a limited area. You needed a larger coalition, you needed a bigger team. So which is why when I quit, though the Sangam, the people in the Sangam think they are still there. The Sangam is there in some fashion. I quit.
Right, but you also say that it's sad that the only people who are dedicated enough to take issues beyond a particular area are ML activists, but they don't have the kind of grounded reality of living with caste and a different kind of movement.
Yeah, this also comes because I think it ties up with your earlier observation that if the left had read Ambedkar, if the left had interacted with Ambedkarite groups, then some part of this dichotomy, could have been resolved in some way. Because they have the commitment, but their vision is blinkered, and so it doesn't carry forward. And for a small movement like this, in which I was a participant of, if one is not part of a larger team and a larger thing, even this has its own limitations.
But so you sort of, in your chapter on left Ambedkarite politics and NGOs, in a way you seem to be saying that you need that kind of constructive work, you need Ambedkarite politics. So why is it that this kind of thing hasn't developed in more places? I mean, the kind of vision that what is your vision for the kind of ideal politics that one should have?
In the 70s there was such a thing as ideal politics, where you were willing to give up, your academic life, you're willing to get into something which didn't promise anything, which probably promised death. You're willing to do that. But over the years, the world has changed. Over the years, even Ambedkarites have changed. The left has stuck to whatever goals it has laid out, armed struggle, squad, the power of the gun, and wherever they've been, pushed back, they are retreating more and more into areas where the Indian army finds it difficult to fight them. But the problem also is that Ambedkarite, people who have joined the Ambedkarite movement have become very aspirational. The state has been very clever in co-opting people from all sectors of the movement. So somebody's become a minister, somebody's been given chairmanship of the local service selection commission. So there are so many ways in which you can co-opt people. And I think this working at grassroots levels has decreased tremendously over the last 30 years. It's no longer the practice to work at the grassroots level. Social media has become so much more powerful. So you take a cab, you go to a village, you talk with some people, you shoot some pictures, you have some slogan, you have some 5 people standing with a poster or a placard, and then you put them up on social media and you think your work is done. So painstaking work among the people, which was, I think, more there in the 70s and even earlier certainly it was there, is no longer there now. Why is it there? Why is it no longer there? Is it because of aspirations? I don't know much about that. But that kind of painstaking work is just not done. I see so many activists in Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, and nobody wants to stay in a village and work. It's not done nowadays.
So, okay, I think I want to come back to this question of politics later, but let me start with sort of the beginning of the book in a way. You know, your family being so against your joining left politics and leaving the house, etc. People are not, as you say, leaving and joining villages, staying in villages, etc. So, what would you suggest to people today, in a sense, if you are in touch with young people, how do you think they can cope with their own, judging from your own experience, how would you advise them to cope with familial constraints? And
I don't think there's any simple way. And I don't think there's a way in which you can accommodate family with your personal interest. There has to be at some point a break, and the break can be mended in some fashion. But without a break, people, especially people coming from dominant caste families, it's very difficult to do any work which is not done earlier. So, I don't know whether, I'm not against advising young people. I think young people should do what their heart tells them, shouldn't listen to older people, shouldn't listen to people like me either. I wouldn't advise young people.
Because people read books like this and then
so they draw their own conclusions.
They draw their own conclusions,
yeah.
right? But in a sense, given the fact that you broke with your family, that they subjected you to ECT treatment, whatever ECT, electrophysical therapy, it harmed you, knowing that families are this kind of constraint. How has your family reacted to reading this book?
Oh no, I don't know at all. I've not asked them. But very funnily, the writing of the book and the publication of the book has brought me closer to family. We've been distanced for so long. And when I told them that I was writing this book, they said, don't do it after we all die. So I said, that's not possible. And I will try not to be malicious, and I don't want to hurt anyone, but I am doing it. And after the book is out, I think because of general appreciation elsewhere, they come around to say, it's not good for the family, but it's good she wrote it. Something like that. It's a very mixed feeling. My sisters are actually giving the books to their friends. But I have not been able to ask them, have you read the book? Because what is in the book must be very hurtful to them. I have not been able to ask, and they don't tell me either. So it's a very peculiar situation right now.
But if they're giving it to their friends, presumably they have read it.
No, but they could also be just proud of a sister who's published a book. No. No, because when my sisters, out of the 5, 3 are abroad. So when the New York Times featured me in some article, though they're not so friendly with me, they all called me up and said, you came in New York Times. So it's got to do with something, displaying that I have somebody who in my family also something, may not have to do with anything to do with the book or what I did. I don't know.
Okay, let me ask about another kind of family, the feminist family in Hyderabad. And you describe the kind of betrayal that you felt when they attacked you, when they came into your house and assaulted your partner. Presumably some of them have read the book. Has there been any kind of rethinking within the feminist movement, you think, as a result of reading something like this? What do you think are the problems with feminist politics? I think there are lots, but I was wondering whether
Yeah, well, they were one of
There's
the
something
first,
else that we could be
they
doing.
one of the first people to call me for a meeting to celebrate the book. Yeah, in Hyderabad, the group which was primarily involved there, one of the first to call me to the meeting, and they celebrated the book. But that particular incident was papered over, and I think there is a sense what I get, because I do speak to them personally one-on-one, is that let's get on with it. Something happened in the past, let's get on with it. And because some of them are famous names, you don't want it to be dragged into other discussions elsewhere, I think. So the less said, the better. It dies down. I think usually that's the advice people give when you face a bad situation. Don't talk about it and it will die down. Right? Because I would think that if something has happened like this, you face it up front. What is, you call a meeting of all those concerned and say, how did it happen? I would very much like to know what happened. Because I don't know, I only know what happened, I only know what I saw. But I don't know what happened, what led them to it. And that's still a matter of hurt. I would like to know what happened. There's their side of, they are not devils, they're good people personally. So what led them to do it? And I think it's important for the feminist movement, when you're critical of so many other institutions, authoritarian institutions, what are the authoritarian practices that you are replicating in your own groups that you need to look at? And why is it that when something has been made so public, you still want to paper it over? I don't know. I mean, I think these are questions that need to be discussed, but I mean, you're the first person to raise it. No other woman has raised it up till now. They'd rather that, this is ignore the elephant in the room.
But that again brings me back to the question of authoritarian practices. So, ML parties have authoritarian hierarchies, other parties do too, feminist groups do too. So, is there a trade-off between organization and authoritarianism? Because in a lot of ways, your book reminded me of Rosa Luxemburg saying that the mistakes of the masses are more valuable than the infallibility of a central committee. But you also need a central committee to organize beyond a particular issue. So what kind of politics do we need organizationally that might kind of address some of these internal issues?
I think first we need to discuss that. If you're talking of authoritarianism, there's one incident in the book in where I behaved terribly. I garlanded the Madigas who went over to the landlord with chappals.
Yeah.
Right? And I've written about that.
But you say that you did it because it's a practice in the community.
We cannot justify it, that's what I thought, and maybe that's my justification for it. But that doesn't detract from the fact that it was authoritarian. It was not done in the village, in front of everybody, and asking people what is the best way to, deal with these people who went to the landlords. I did it in my house. I called them to Hyderabad and did it in my house and nobody else was there. So is there a trade-off between organized? Yes, because at that time I felt it was crucial, once they go over to the landlord, the struggle is split and we've lost it. When we come so close to winning it, we're losing it. But I think there can never be any trade-off. Once you, I think, start being authoritarian, it's all the way down. I was probably saved because the others around me were far more sensible. But I think left to myself, I would have destroyed the movement.
So there are many passages when you talk about how you recommended somebody being killed or something being, this garlanding thing, the garlanding the shoe, chappals, but also with all sorts of other things, and people didn't rise to the kind of violent suggestion, right? So one sees there are films as well which talk about the Naxalite movement where villagers are much more kind of ready to compromise and the party is not. So you talk also about how they taught you that one should go and confront the police militantly rather than. So what do you think is the stand on violence. You say that the discussions have been moralistic and they've not really addressed the question in the way it should have been. But at the same time, in the background of the success of the Sangam, in some places you left it because the Maoists were there and they were going to, get rid of the landlord. So what kind of stand do you think the villagers have on violence?
I think the villagers basically oppose violence because they see that violence only creates more violence. And they are always the sufferers because they are at the bottom of the heap and anything happens, they get the worst part of it. So I think basically villagers are peaceable, don't want to kill, don't want to hurt, and they want to find a way in which both parties can be brought together at some kind of doable compromise. And not that there aren't incidents where villagers are also violent and doing things, but their violence is situated in a very specific group context, which is why I think when there is violence which is planned by a political party, I think it backfires. It's not worth it, and it's a lot of damage that it causes. But when there is violence, spontaneous public violence, I wouldn't condemn that. I wouldn't, condemn that. But I think by and large people are peaceable when it comes to group activity. They know that a mob can transform into something furious in a few minutes, so they're very careful in planning activities.
So, what do you think has changed in that whole landscape of land and aspiration? What's the situation on the ground now in Replicable? And also, why did you stop the book in 91? I mean, I know that's when you said you left the Sangam, but what after that?
92.
92. And then you have this postscript of 2013. But what has changed? And tell us for the audience here a bit about the land struggle and the difference between individual land and also the initial struggles and also the capturing. Sorry, I'm forgetting the names of the villages that I just written down in.
I thought and I still continue to think that land is a very crucial entitlement which many activists and political parties ignore because it upsets the power relations so much, not just in the countryside, but it's a very delicate system where the village and the state politics are linked. So it upsets this system so much that people don't want to look at land entitlements. But I think as in the 70s, now land is still important. Land ownership of a little bit of land makes the difference between destitution and poverty. Somebody who's poor can become destitute, absolutely destitute, a beggar, a charminar, if he has no land. But when he has some land, that land is collateral for taking a loan, for health expenses, for education of a child. And land, when people work on land, they work intensively. They don't work like a landlord does. 3 acres is like gold to a small peasant. So he works intensively with 3 crops, 4 crops, whatever water he can manage. And that family, entire family works on the land. And that brings them up to almost middle peasant level. So if we want, at that time when I was working, the Ambedkarites were arguing that, you are leading up the wrong tree. What we want is education for the Dalits. We don't want land. This is too much of a mess, we pay too high a price for this. We want education. Education is a way out, but how many people can you educate sufficiently? How many livelihoods can you provide sufficiently to take them off the land? We are still by and large an agricultural country, even though agriculture may not contribute so much to the GDP. But people who live on the land need to have some basic income to lead their lives, educate their children, deal with their health problems. And equitable distribution of land, I think, is one of the solutions. You don't need to have someone with 2,000 acres and someone with no land at all. It doesn't make sense at all. And land is not something which someone brought with him or her when they were born. It's fixed. It's there it's God, I'm not God given because don't believe in God. No, it's something which is there for all of us. It's part of the earth. It's like the air, the water. Land is also like that. See, equitable distribution of land is, I think, one very important way of providing livelihoods and of transforming power relations in not just the countryside, but wherever this ripple effect sets in.
But in many of the cases where people did get land, you talk about how B.D. Sharma came and changed the Bahanis and Shankaran distributed the land and there were sympathetic MROs. But given that the struggles to actually get land legally and keep it legally are so difficult, what is wrong with left parties simply reclaiming the land and not really bothering with the legal struggle?
By left parties you mean ML, because the other
ML,
left parties don't bother about land.
Well, yeah, but the there are New Democracy
Yeah,
and
ML factions.
ML factions have different ML factions,
Because
not just the
wherever they planted red flags and said, okay, this is our land, they've lost all that land. Wherever, like all over Telangana, wherever it's been, land has never been retained anywhere. So you plant a red flag and for 2 years because the landlord runs away to the city and doesn't complain to the police, or the police are, you're in a more powerful police don't want to interfere. But invariably, landlord comes back and though he's not present physically, he sells the land to the rich peasants. So what has happened is, in all over Telangana, it's not that Reddies own the land so much as they put the middle peasants, the Gollas, the Gaudas, who now own substantial chunks of land, and these people, because they stay in the village, are much more inimical to the Dalits than the landlords ever were. So the left party slogan of land to the village has never worked.
But one could also argue that the reason why, I'm playing devil's advocate and I take your point, I'm not sort of denying that, but there was a whole class of people, you talk about during the emergency coming to stay with you, Gandhar, and Mr. Shankaran helping, and that era of bureaucrats seems to have disappeared. I don't know if that's the case, but younger people perhaps don't have that kind of authority, and the people who are in power don't seem to have that sympathy. So given that many of your struggles involved access to people like that, as well as old comrades like Sanjay Babu, and access to a variety of other people because of your class background, how replicable is the legal struggle today?
I don't know about replicability, I'm talking of necessity. If there is a necessity, you create the infrastructure that you need for it. It's something like a block in the heart. They say if you have a block in the heart, the corporate hospitals want to do a bypass. Whereas it's proven that the body itself creates other ways for the blood to flow through. So now if you don't have sympathetic officials, if you don't have so many of the assets which I have, you have now cell phones, you've got smartphones, you've got the internet, you've got just with the WhatsApp call, people gather in half an hour they can gather at the Mandal headquarters. And then I think more than anything else, you've got now non-dominant class people staffing lower ranks in the administrative hierarchy, which means many MROs, many circle inspectors, sub-inspectors. Earlier they were all Reddies, every fellow was a Reddy. Now we've got so many people from other sections into the lower administrative hierarchy. So you make ways, you build a structure, make new allies. The thing is not of replicability so much, or is this issue important enough for us to take it up? That's the point, I think. Not whether she did it because she had so many people going for.
No, it's not that you had so many people, but that there were people who cared.
But even now there are people always who care. We have to find them. There are always people who care. I can never think that people who care are no longer there. If you say that, then there is no hope at all. I'm always optimistic. You find people, for example, Save the Snake Society. You have all the dedicated people who left IITs and are sitting and snaking snakes all over India. Or Save the Sparrows, or Save something. Especially the animal welfare activists are a very dedicated lot. Why are they dedicated lot? Because there's no other issue which is occupying their interest. I'm sure if there is something else which picks up, and now smartphones are such an asset to gather people. Earlier we had to walk from village to village, so difficult, word of mouth to tell people. Now with just one WhatsApp call you can gather people, and this people never discount the fact that people from non-dominant castes are now dominating the lower administrative hierarchy. The collectors and IAS officers may be from elsewhere, but all the local things. So which means there are very intimate connections which people can make with such people. So there are so many pluses on this side. Yeah, and so the thing is to make use of the pluses. There might be some negatives, but I think there's always hope. I mean, how can there not be hope?
So I have a couple more questions, Mehtab, and then can I open it up to?
Yes.
Yeah. So having to just walk from village to village with partial troops, but one thing in all, you talk about the food, you talk about the. So this is a kind of personal question. You talk about the importance of bathrooms, which I think is really important, and why you wouldn't go to one place in the city. But you never talk about periods. And I was really struck because to me it's like so critical in like one's life to do, especially if you're walking around.
Yeah, I forgot. I just
I
forgot
was
that
wondering
now
why.
I'm menopausal. Maybe it's like one had periods, oh my God, that was hell because you carried along a lot of stuff, you couldn't dispose of stuff, and then when you, in actually one meeting where there were so many people sitting, it fell off. Yeah, because the bloody thing was like right next to me. And then I had to get up slowly, then put my sari around it, pick it up and go. Oh, it was hell, without a doubt.
And the women who worked with you, was this an issue for them as well?
Yeah.
Or how?
I think they bleed less. My thing was, I always ask, why is it that you don't have to carry, large stuff like I have to carry? I think they bleed less because of the hard work that they do. They do hard work, physical labor. This is natural. They see animals, in sexual union. They see people in sexual union because they have small huts where whole families sleep. And menstrual cloth is washed. I mean, you don't have a special place to wash and dry it. It's washed and dried all over. Childbirth is open. When the Dayama comes to deliver the child, all women would be crowding, children would be crowding. So I think many of the body functions are not as shameful to them as they are to us.
But how much do you think you've been able to kind of recast yourself? In a sense, that's an issue that comes up in the book and comes up in kind of political, but I don't really know if it's possible. What does it even mean? What is the
I think it's a
concern?
hyped up thing, the Marxists say we declass ourselves. You can never declass or decast yourself. You can look with more empathy towards people of other communities. But what you've been raised with, a lot of that remains with you in some way or the other. If you ask me now, after so many years, how many of your friends are Brahmins? I'd be ashamed to tell you the number. If you ask me how many houses of Dalits have you eaten recently, I'd be ashamed to tell you the answer. So, I don't know, I think this decasting, declassing is all high. If you can be genuine and authentic at a time when you're working with other communities, I think that's good enough. Let's not sort of go beyond that.
Okay, my last question, I have lots more, but I'll ask you later, is about the emergency. And you start your political life during the emergency with the death of George Reddy, whose brother you married. What do student politics of that time tell us about the ability of student politics to transform larger politics, and what is the difference between the emergency then and the situation now, if any, or what? There is the what?
Yeah. I think people are far more aspirational now. I'm sounding like such a whining thing, but it always troubles me when I see young people not wanting to, they see some atrocity in front of them, when say Gujarat happened or something else happened, just want to give up everything and go there and fight. How can you not want to do it? Because you're young, your blood is boiling and you think you can change the world. That's the time when you can change the world. I mean, now at my age, I know I can't do anything, but when you're young, you can do so many things. So why aren't young people doing these kind of things?
They're going to jail. I mean, like all the Delhi young people have, many of them have gone to
Yes,
jail.
some of them, not like in the 70s, hundreds and thousands went to jail. All my friends have been in jail at some time or the other, either in jail or underground, and which is a large number, not tens or 20s, hundreds. And in the villages far more, because there was a movement in Srikakulam and some parts of Telangana. They were all in jail, the young people were, and every single person who's in Telangana politics today owes his or her existence to ML politics, by the way. All the ministers in KCR's government have all been members of the radical left movement at some point or the other. They've been in jail, they've been underground, and then they've come out into mainstream, joined the mainstream political party. So at that time it was a big thing. I mean, I don't know enough about Delhi politics to comment about that, but at that time it was normal. Going to jail, being there for some time, going underground was not considered something extraordinary. What is the difference is, I think at that time, so many things were happening all over the world. So many things were happening in India. It was not just Andhra, Telangana, there was Naxalbari, there was also the Navnirmar movement. Even Gujarat was like agitated at that time. Even Gujarat, which is like, it's a big thing. And certainly the New Left movement in Europe, the Feminist movement in the US, Black Panthers in a big way. Dalit Panthers, I think, was a little later, 74, 75. But the whole decade was a decade of rebellion. And there was so much matter out there for people to read and identify with. Now, I think in this 2022, all over the world, where is it that you see movements like that in a big way? So, I think that has got something to do with it, that when there is an upsurge, there's a lot more opportunity for youth to get involved in. That's the difference between the 70s and now. I'm not saying one can't create something like that now. But the same issue is there. If you want to create something now, you have to go to the grassroots. If you're staying among students, you have to go from hostel room to hostel room. You just can't send a WhatsApp message and say meeting. You have to go knock from door to door, talk with people all over the night, convince them. You have to go to villages or the bastis, stay there, talk with people. And that's one thing which I find activists are not doing as much as they should be doing. Organizing is being given is short shrift. Organizing, I think, is basic.
But in terms of the repression, what do you feel is the difference between...
We were shot down. And you're put in jail. So what's the thing to say repression? Just because you're sitting in jail, you're sitting 1 year in jail. I don't think there's anything big about it. I don't think the Delhi people have suffered so much that I think you're so privileged that this 1 year in jail is. But we were shot in Andhra. One of my best friends was shot. I know people whose nails were pulled out, nail by nail. Know somebody whose tongue was cut. And so what is the Delhi thing, so big to talk about? So there will be bound to be repression. You take up some activity against the state, there's bound to be repression, is it not?
No, so parts of the country have been suffering. Chhattisgarh, Northeast, Kashmir is under emergency. But overall, the climate of authoritarian politics is
yes
very much there now and worldwide.
Yeah, the state is far more powerful.
So in that sense, what are the ways that you think people should organize? As you said, go from basti to basti, hostel room to hostel room. What else?
I think we have to be smarter. I think the more important thing is, apart from listening to people, you have to know your enemy. If you are going to fight somebody, you have to know him first. So you have to know the enemy. And you can't just say, you can't have these jargon saying, Modi something, this fellow something, and put them aside. You have to know them, you have to study them, we have to see how can we, what are the weak points, where are the points that, where do we need to push. And I think a lot of what is going on is sloganeering, and academia has failed miserably in. Academia should have done enough studies or research to show what's going on. Hasn't been doing it, has been producing PhD thesis after thesis, but not like really. So there is no, I think, sufficient study of the enemy. I think listening to people one and studying the enemy is very important.
Well, that would have brought me to the Hyderabad Book Trust, but I think there are lots of questions, so I will stop and maybe come back. Thank you. So, anyone wants to raise any questions?
You, because you began by saying that the title is a bit of a misnomer, that it's not so much about a lapsed revolutionary. The book itself is very revolutionary in nature, so I was waiting to hear from you why you felt so. I mean, that you pitched it very high. It aroused a lot of curiosity in me, but you didn't quite address that. Will you please do that?
I think people should read the book. I don't want to act as a spoiler. So, I mean, I didn't go chapter by chapter. I could have, but I want people to read the book themselves and figure out.
A broad sense of why you called it revolutionary.
Because it talks about different ways of being political, because it talks about how revolution as part of ML politics does not really address what people want. It talks about the Sangam and the kinds of issues that were taken up and how you need a Bedkarite and left politics. So what's not revolutionary about it? Like, it talks about feminist politics and how to be feminist. Within the home, to write about your own family, like, isn't that revolutionary? Isn't it hard to write about one's own family and friends? I mean, that's very, very hard.
Yeah.
It's easier to write about people that you don't know. So,
Experiences, or are they two different things, two different constructs, jati and caste?
I have no idea yours.
What is your view about the Indian state now? From your time in the revolution and now, has it changed? Has it evolved? Or in what? If so, in what way? If not, then why not?
Not a political analyst. I did something in some part of my life which was important to me. I wrote about it, and I'm neither active nor an analyst now. So why should I give you my opinion? I mean, my opinion is not worth it. No? If you want facts, then something. But my opinion is maybe casually over coffee, not a problem. And it's not that I'm frightened to talk about it, right? I have no fear of what someone is going to, catch me up for it, but it's only an opinion. So it's not worth anything, if you don't mind.
Part of, you are also an organizer. And one question that sort of comes up, and I think which is something that all of us are kind of facing as well, that at one end you have, when you're organizing, there is this purity that you're trying to achieve in terms of your ideological positions. And then there is an idea which says that at this point of time they're fighting this hegemon, or Hinduism hegemon. So therefore you need to sort of find common grounds to organize instead of trying to achieve any purity. So as an organizer, and considering, I'm not asking about your opinion on the state at this point of time, but considering the politics, how would you look at as an organizer in terms of, I know it's a very complex issue, but how would you sort of comment on that in terms of considering the juncture that we are in at this point of time?
Whether it's in a college or whether it's in a basti or in a village. My primary responsibility is to the people I'm organizing, not my ideology. Let's be very clear on that. You are organizing a group because, you're not organizing the entire Indian Revolution, or you're not, assuming we're not doing that. We're organizing in, say, you're organizing in JNU, or you're organizing manual scavengers somewhere, or you're organizing villagers for the Adivasis in Bastar. I would say my primary responsibility is to the group I'm organizing. So I listen very carefully. When you listen carefully, the answers come up from the ground. And then I think, you see, it's not as if we have no ideology, broad ideology, or that we haven't read, or we don't know what class or caste means. So all those fall in place when we listen to people and our activities are planned openly. When our activities are planned openly, I think something comes up organically. But if you go instead with an ideology and say, this is what I want to implement, you're not being fair to the people you are organizing.
Srilega, I'm a scientist from IIT Bombay. Actually, I'm undergoing academic harassments for the past 9 years. Actually, for solving that issue, I came over here in Delhi to meet the Prime Minister and all. So, during your talk also, you are telling many things about the women empowerment, that landslide, that revolutionary activities you have done. So, at the last point you are telling, that got strike into my mind actually. So you are telling that before fighting for something, we should know the enemies and we should study about them. So I haven't, actually for the past 1 year I am doing a big campaign through the social medias. And so I know about the enemies and each and everybody. I have a clear analysis and study, everything is there. But the some professors, students and staff from IIT Bombay, they are dominating everywhere and literally ruling the Indian legislative system, constituency, everything, because they are blocking all the advocates in the Kerala High Court, even the Bombay High Court, Supreme Court, and not to take up the case. They are afraid of a legal case registration. The same way they are blocking all the police officers to not to register an FIR. And on the back, they are continuously torturing me wherever I am going across India, or 6-7 cities, and not only in India, even if wherever I am applying abroad, UK, US, Germany, wherever. So it's like a joint organized crime. I even reported to Interpol. That much big crime, and even I reported to UN Secretary General. So everywhere they are blocking and no justice, nothing. Or even they are threatening the judges. That is the situation. So how do you feel, and how, from your experience, how can I approach further, or what would be your sense? One more point. So you are telling about the education points. Actually, this is one of the tragic stage of India's top technical institutes. I am from IIT Bombay, India's top technical institute. Actually, the most of the process, they are afraid and they don't have the confidence or courage to speak up, and they are being suppressed. Even if now I am still alive and I am speaking, because since I am out of IIT Bombay, outside IIT Bombay. This week also 2 students committed suicide. This is the situation. Everybody is being suppressed. Even if you are approaching the student cell or women's cell, nothing will happen, and they will first create, the first step is they will try to save the process and will create a fake mental label on us. For me also the same thing, they have done it, and now they are stamping it everywhere. And wherever I am approaching, they are blocking my applications from Cambridge, Oxford, Brook, Stanford, everywhere continuously for the past 3-4 years, and to hide up this thing, and they want to save the IIT's brand name. This is not only in IIT Bombay, and across all IIT, especially in IIT Madras, you might be aware about their caste discrimination. There is so much dominant, and many students committed suicide. Recently, one Professor Unikrishnan here resigned from IIT Guwahati. British Roy here said that these people from IIT Hyderabad, one student committed suicide at IIT Kanpur. Actually, this is a common scenario. Actually, the main problem now in IITs, they don't have courage or confidence. There is nobody to listen. Everybody is busy and competition and benefits and all. So nobody has courage or confidence to speak up. These are actually we are building up some India's most of the prominent resources and money is getting spent into IITs. But they are competing each other. They don't know what is education, what is the purpose of education. That is the stage. And somebody is dominating, everybody will follow. The same case with the process also. Nobody has the guts or common sense how to deal a problem at the
I mean, no, don't drop the fight. I'm never suggesting they drop the fight. Till you get all your structure ready, bide your time so that you don't get destroyed in the process.
I already got destroyed. I got 3 years gap in my career, and now do or die situation. They were about to kill me many times. They tried.
So I'm sorry. Can we continue? I mean, I'm really sorry to cut you short, but maybe you can talk outside, yeah, because I think other people may also want to.
In addition to this, what she pointed out, I was noting down this actually initially itself. I just want to come out of this caste, discriminations and all.
The experiences actually in the 19th and 20th century, there were a lot of revolutionary movements and reform movements. Many revolutionaries and reformers were trying to change the situation of this caste system in India. But now, in the 21st century, what we see is a U-turn. Now things are going from bad to worse in this situation, as she pointed out, many of the universities. Even among the educated people, it is getting more and more strengthened, and the discrimination is getting more and more, wide. So the gap is getting more and more wide. So what is your take on this? Is it because of a purposely made political agenda that it is happening like this due to the narratives that are getting built with the itihas and things like that? What is your take on this, and how we all together can address this situation?
Do you have a related question?
Yeah, ma'am, when we compare the two scenarios, say in the 70s scenario and today, then we find that during your time, there were many people, many leaders who were coming from the upper Hindu caste. Now, the situation has seemed to have changed. And the struggle is being led by, Dalits, Muslims, the democratic struggle. Do you also, think there is a link in what they are saying?
That caste has become, I think you're arguing at cross purposes, the two of you. She's saying caste has become even more entrenched now, right? I think, I see far more. In my time, there was only one among our friends who came from the scheduled caste and very few from the backward caste. But now I see so many leaders from non-dominant caste communities. And the movement is certainly stronger in the sense, in the media for instance. In my time, when anybody was killed, when a scheduled caste person was killed, Dalit was killed, they say Harijan killed, right? By whom? No. But after Karan Chedu and after the Dalit Mahasabha was formed in 1985, they said Kamma landlords killed Madiga laborers. For the first time, caste was mentioned, which was a big, it was recognition that caste existed. In my time, caste was papered over. They said caste didn't exist. So now the fact that people are arguing openly that caste exists is a very positive trend. And that people from communities which were not enfranchised earlier are coming up now, it's a very positive trend. I don't think the situation is worse. It's possible that because so many more Dalits and backward caste communities and Muslims are coming up into public spaces, so you're finding, so many more of you are finding discrimination is always there, but you're seeing it now and you're fighting against it. So that's a very positive trend. So many more in public spaces as compared to the 70s. Look at that, look at the figure of people who are coming out now. So I think it's this, you're seeing the glass, half empty, I'm seeing the glass half full.
Is it correct that upper Hindu castes have, they have kind of intermeshing with the dominant, with the state rather. They are getting together. The dominant Hindu castes are.
You are saying that among Hindus, most Hindus are now Hindutva. Am I right? Yeah. But most Hindus were always Hindutva. You scratch them, they were always Hindutva. Somebody married a Muslim, killed that fellow. This was all there even in the 70s. It's nothing new. So to say that this is something new, I don't agree. I think in Hindus, the religion itself and people practicing the religion were always Hindutva. It's now come out openly because there's a space for it, and they are widening that space and making it legitimate. Earlier it was not politically correct to say kill the Muslim, or unless he ran away with your daughter, you didn't say it openly. Now you can say it even if you didn't run away with your daughter, you can say it. I think that's all there is. Hindus have always been Hindutva.
So at one point in the book you posit, like in your own words, whether the idea of a left liberal revolution sublimate the sex drive. could we apply this to Ambedkarite politics as well? Because one major part to which I related in the book is where you, through subtle or otherwise, many examples highlight
See the journey and the way the book has come. Navanya has brought, it's a beautiful book in thought and presentation both. And my second observation, I just wanted to know from you as a writer, you traveled back and you registered your 30 years journey into it. And as a woman, as a revolutionary, I agree with Nandini that it's about a revolution that through which you passed, which was part of your life, which is part of your life, because you are still process of the change. I just want to know that while writing these books, this book, your memoirs, whether while writing you moved back to that phase of your life, you must have recollected, as because I was just going through detail about Gadar, how you moved, and that is a very fascinating chapter which I was just reading and trying to understand. So what was the best part, or what was the most difficult part for you to collect? And right now when the book is coming in 2021, 2022, I take a privilege to disagree with you that both the periods are the same. Maybe the generation or maybe the kind of democracy I'm feeling right now. So whether there was some hunch, some kind of pressure that it is coming in this period, and you were recollecting, because 400 books, Hyderabad book, more than 400 books Hyderabad Book Trust has brought, and they are all related with the burning issues. So what was the most tough part for you? What was the most tough chapter for you? And if you can just share that why.
There is no such thing. I wrote the book after my husband died and I was going through a very difficult time. So I wrote the book just like that. It was for myself, and I put it by for 2 years. 2017 is when I wrote it, and COVID came in 2020. 3 years it was just lying there. And in COVID I had 2 months when my office shut down. I had no work to do. I'd gone to stay in a friend's place and no cooking to do, no housework. So I picked it up again and started work on it. So even then it was recollecting something. The most difficult part of it was working with Navayana. They asked me thousands of queries. What is his initial? What was he? What was his post? How many acres? What is the exact name of this village? Who was the sarpanch? And my God, that was the detailing and the queries which they asked was the toughest part. Because I really then had to do hard work. All the rest was just writing. Chumma, you wrote whatever you remembered. But this was, they made it into a book. And so that, the kind of work, they must have put in hard work too, but I also put in hard work. That was the hardest part of the book.
See, 90s was the time when all the left was declining, all the MLPs were declining, and you see the rise of Chandrababu Naidu as Chief Minister, as the first person to claim as a development Chief Minister before S.M. Krishna and Nitish Kumar claiming that. And you see then India claiming that there is something called development politics from Gujarat. See, in 90s, all the ex-Maoists who left Maoism became real estate owners, even certain people became big real estate mafia in Hyderabad and a lot of cities. And it was also the time when Dalit movement was growing, Dalit Mahasabha and the MRPS was growing, and then in the end of the book you also mentioned Ashram and Lancet others. So why do you leave the book in 90s? The 90s was an important debate because Dalit movement, Maoism, women's movement was at its turning point. There was a dialogue happening. Ranganakama debated with Shivsagar debated with Ram. All of this, you have a lot of, and you are very much integral to all of that. So why do you leave at that point? And the current day Telangana that we are in, so it is, all the reminiscences are back in the 90s. So what do you have to say?
Maybe there was a burnout. And see, the reservation debate or the MRPS, Dalit Mahasabha I was an integral part of Dalit Mahasabha. That was early, mid-80s. So Dalit Mahasabha was not the issue so much as MRPS, the categorization debate came and split the Dalit movement into two. So it was not a very happy time to be in. All our friends were on either side. You talk to this person, I won't talk to you. You talk to that person, I won't talk to you. It was not a very happy time for others to be in. Certainly the reservation debate came, but these were larger national questions. I was working in villages. I was interested in I was not interested in larger political questions in which my villagers were not part of. How can I worked with these villagers because I knew them personally. They were my people, right? And when there was nothing which I could do with my people, what am I worried about that is the reservation debate and other debate, I participated anyway. I mean, we brought out books, we did all that. But to link that with the movement which was going on in the villages in this way, there was no link. The MRPS was not interested in what you're doing, land entitlements in villages or power relationship. They were interested in getting their quota from the Malas. The fight was largely with the Malas. And the Mandal debate was, it's a pan-Indian context. No? What did it have to do particularly with the villages? Okay, so some BC communities were mobilized. But that did not change the power relationship in the villages I worked in. And my problem was not so much in that. My problem was that the power relationship in the villages had changed to such an extent that we were becoming powerful. Our person would become MLA, the sarpanches would be ours. What do we do next? I did not know what we could do next. Because I did not know, I thought better to leave.
Ahead. But you won't be surprised to hear that it's a question about the feminist movement. So I was struck by first Nandini's questioning of you on the feminist movement and her prefacing it by saying, I have my differences. Because you didn't preface any of the other things by saying, I have my differences with the Maoists or with the X or the Y or the Z.
Because I've expressed those publicly.
And then I was struck by the fact that when you started talking about your differences with the women's groups and what happened with them, there was this kind of laughter and titter that went around the room, as if, now this juicy battle between women we're going to hear about, and women fight with each other anyway. I mean, I felt that, that's what I'm doing. My question to you is, I think it was extremely brave and honest of you to write about that, because these were women who were your comrades. Years later, when your book comes out, they invite you to a discussion about the book, but they don't raise the subject. Why did you not raise it? If the question troubled you, do you think it might have been possible? So I'm not asking this out of aggression. I'm saying, yes, we need to be self-critical of the women's movement. We need to see where we've gone wrong. It is entirely possible that those groups, X number of years later, looking back, seeing themselves written about, understand what you're saying, have by now moved on and have a different kind of thinking on violence and in all the things which, the movement itself has also grown. And they're inviting you is a way of, without saying it, saying, yeah, we accept your criticism. But for you, perhaps not, but you didn't raise it yourself. And I want to compare it with the family, because the family's terrible violence, indifference, insult, injury is looked at with a great deal more tolerance in retrospect. A great deal more acceptance in retrospect. Even when you talked about your sisters taking the book round, giving it to people, there is an underlying kind of affection, smile, something. I'm just asking, is there a difference? Where does it come from? Are we much more critical of our own movements? I don't know. So I said to you, it's a complicated question. And I'm not even sure how to articulate it, but it worried me. And it stayed in my mind. So I've been holding on to it all the time, thinking, shall I ask it, shall I not? then I thought the hell with it, I'll ask in
I'm
English.
so glad you asked because it is not only possible, it's probably true that I resent them more than I resent my family. My family, I think, is a hidebound Brahmin Orthodox family which didn't know better. But these were people through my work, and then I asked them repeatedly while writing the book, why did this happen? And they were silent. So their silence even now, it's disturbing, no? And I did ask one of, see, I'm close to them personally. Personally, some of them are very good friends of mine. So when after the book came out, and I said, have you read the book and have you read this part and what do you think? She said, Gita, you move on. Why are you going on about this? So I felt hurt because I think any discussion, you bring it out into the open. You just now said they felt, that she was right in writing what she did. If they had said that one thing, it's washed off, no? All the hurt of all those years would have been washed off. My sister did, my elder sister did say, we were wrong in what we did. But my parents were so insistent, we had to do it. Don't blame us so much, don't blame us too much for it. But these people have never said a word about it. So, naturally I would, when someone says, I'm sorry, everything is washed off, But when you refuse to say you're sorry, I'm not saying sorry in front of a big group. I'm saying sorry one-to-one in a small group. You called me over to celebrate the book, and they did celebrate the book. And when someone asked me a question, there's also a problem in that the younger feminists are questioning the older feminists, by the way. There's this big thing going on. So some of the younger groups said, they asked me, are you willing now to, what was the exact question? Something to this extent. Are you willing to move on and, repair your breaches with them? Yeah? So I said, what is there for me to move on? I've written the book, done, dusted. I put it out into the open. It's up to them to, repair any breaches. I said that openly. I don't know really. And I agree with you there. It's easy to make up with family because everybody helps us in getting together. They say she's only your sister, she's only your father, But where feminists are concerned, you did talk about the titter in the room. People are waiting to see where women can, because women have been aggressive, so they're getting a bit of their own back. I do see, and in fact, when I sent it to Anand, I highlighted that entire chapter. I said, I thought 2,000 thoughts. Do we want it at all? I wasn't sure somewhere because I knew it could be used. Then I said, let them face the music. If they did it and they don't want to discuss this with me, let it be out in the open.
Thank you.
So that every morning you remember us. Thank you, But at the same time, repression is also there. This government has branded everyone as urban representatives.